one of my favorite coach speak phrases and cliches. My top three are, it is what it is, that's number one. Two is, I don't have a crystal ball, guys, which is what, coaches say with a little bit of derision to media when they ask to hypothetical questions about the future. Coaches don't like hypothetical questions. They also don't like hypothetical questions about the future. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have a crystal ball. And then there's the third one, which is you can only control what you can control, which is substituted at this time of year when players don't show up. I'm only talking about the guys who are here. Coach Brian Billick, do any of these cliches sound familiar to you at all?
I think I invented all three of those, Rich. I think I may have been the first one to utter, and one of many, obviously.
Now, we were talking on the previous hour about Greg Popovich. If you ask him an omnibus question or a talk about question, talk about this, you're going to get the horns from that bull. Were you the same way, too, at a press conference, Coach?
No, you know me. I was fairly, I enjoyed that interaction. And as I always told the media, look, sure. I may not tell you what you want to know, but I'm going to give you your 30-second bite. I'm going to fill your notebook. I'm going to give you enough to work with. But yeah, I mean, because a lot of them are unanswerable questions, particularly in the off season. One of the things I learned a long time ago, Denny Green taught me a long time ago. He says there's a time for pay and there's time for play. And you shouldn't be talking about either when it's time for the appropriate one. This is a time for pay. It never, and I made this mistake time and again. It took me a while to learn because I got drawn into it at times when players didn't show up to workouts or contract. It's a mistake as a coach. You just hold it at arm's length and the cliche, look, I can only coach the guys that are here.
Yep.
I'll focus on that because it really is out of my hands, kind of. I find the Antonio Brown circumstance interesting when a guy signs a contract and then gets to the last part of it. And we always told guys when we signed, look, if it's a 4-year deal, the first 2 years are for you. You win the first 2 years. But the last 2 years we get our pay. That's that because that's what this deal is about. And they get their first 2 years or a year in a deal, and they're all happy. But now they say, hey, they're under market. And I want to wait. We had this conversation. So, yeah, it's always an interesting time in the NFL because you're talking about pay.
Brian Billick joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So what do you make of the Tebow signing? Why bring in a fourth quarterback for off-season workouts, Brian? What is Chip Kelly thinking? Let's really just focus in on the football reality of this signing that's expected to go down today in Philadelphia.
Well, yeah, and we could go on and on again about what I call the Anna Kournikova of the NFL. Is there anybody been written more about a guy has never played, really, than Tim Tebow? But I will say this, like everybody trying to say, okay, what were they thinking here? The Eagles, their biggest problem last year, in my opinion, was giving up too many big plays defensively. And they really, up and down the field, but they bogged down in the red zone at critical times. Maybe, and Chip Kelly, you thought Rex Ryan and certainly Bill Belichick maybe had this in the back of their mind to use a Tim Tebow in isolated situations. At the end of the day, Belichick said, I'm not taking Brady off the field. And even Rex, who values that type of thing, couldn't find a place to play Tim Tebow. It may be that Chip Kelly, and we've talked for a while now, Chip Kelly, he's been at 2 years. He's got a very strong belief that he can kind of play with anybody. He may have a very specific role for Tim Tebow, and we'll see if he can pull it off in terms of willing to pull your quarterback and put Tim Tebow in for those 5, 6, 7, 8 plays that you want to play him in.
But you're not going to carry 4 quarterbacks, Coach. You can't do that.
Well,
right?
There's a lot of things you can say, but when it comes to Chip Kelly, I don't know. I don't know what Chip Kelly's going to do. He's been at it long enough now. He's going to do it his way. He doesn't care what the conventional NFL thinking is. He'll carry whatever he wants to carry. I can't see him carrying 4 quarterbacks. A lot of teams, as you know, have gotten to the point where they carry 2 quarterbacks for those roster spots and then have a guy on developmental squad or whatever. You can see him carrying 3 because I think we know Tim Tebow can't play quarterback in the NFL on a consistent level on a 500-throw season, but maybe he has that isolated help on a team that would actually use him in that way. I'll give Chip Kelly the benefit of the doubt here until we see what turns out.
Brian Billick joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So Mike Pettin, Browns coach, you know him. He's from your family tree, is he not, Brian?
Yes, he is. Mike's a good man.
Okay. So let's say he settles in to the television yesterday, has a quiet moment at home, turns on the Cleveland Cavaliers playoff game against the Boston Celtics, and sees Johnny Manziel sitting courtside. He thinks, A, That's good. Good for him. He's showing support for the home team. He's showing support for his friend. Or B, what in the world is he doing sitting courtside? What do you think he's saying, Coach?
Yeah, that's a tough one because, for a guy that just got a rehab, until all of a sudden, and very had the mea culpa, and I'm sorry, I apologize to fans, apologize to my teammates, my focus has got to change. Should he not be sitting courtside at the game? No. Where else might he be? Would I do that? Would I say, you know what, this is what you ought to do to get out in your first public appearance? Again, the rehab may have helped in terms of the substance problem that he apparently had. It obviously hasn't helped him with the judgment. Yeah,
I mean, I'm trying not to make too much of it, even though I have brought it up now for the first hour and 10 minutes of this program today, that we're all rooting for him and we're all making sure as best we can that he is got his head screwed on right for his life. But I just think that, is it too much? Is it like the no fun league aspect of the NFL where it's just like he needs to be about the job all the time now? Or can he live his life with the trimmings and trappings of celebrity and still be the guy that they all hope to be in Cleveland and make this about something when maybe it shouldn't be about anything? I'm sort of going back and forth on this, Coach. But
and let's keep in mind now, in fairness, he created this scenario now. Okay, we're not just arbitrarily, holding a guy responsible to an unrealistic level in the fishbowl and whatever. What I find interesting in watching the flow of the news today that strikes me, and I don't mean to be critical, but as you say, that means, he's going about to be critical. But in a time when we're a week away from the draft, which, right now, to me, this is the best time of year because we're going to find out the schedule tomorrow, which for coaches and players, the season becomes real right now. Free agency and the money, but within a week's time, we're going to know the schedule, who we're going to play, when we're going to play. And then we're going to finish out our roster, for the most part, with the draft. We're ready to go. This season has become real. With all that energy going in the NFL, we're being consumed on the airways right now with two quarterbacks that can't play in the National Football League. It's interesting to me at the very least.
Brian Billick here on the Rich Eisen Show. So 10 days out from the draft, are all the boards set across the 32 teams right now in the league, or is there really some wiggle room at the top of the draft right now in draft rooms, Coach?
There may be wiggle room in the sense that, and again, in the places I've been that have done it, again, Ozzie Newsome in Baltimore the longest time that I was with the team, obviously, in the way Ozzie did it. There's a little bit of scrimmaging. The board is about to be finally set. You're going to go through a couple of your mock battles, so to speak. This guy or that guy, you get the last people waiting in. I think Ozzie would go through some of these mock drafts more so everybody could have their final say, that we need to take, this one player. We need to take DJ Humphries over Marcus Peters, and let everybody have their last little go-round with it to get it out on the table. Does a guy like Ozzie Newsome pretty much know where the board's stacked up right now? Yeah, I got to believe that if the draft were today, he'd be fine with it.
Brian Billick joining me here now. So it is going to be Winston and then Mariota, do you think, too? Is that the way it's going to go?
Yeah, it's all conjecture. And in both these guys, with all the talk going around it, both of them are a pick 'em, and you got a 50-50 chance. There's no reason these two guys shouldn't be good quarterbacks in the National Football League. None whatsoever. Even with Winston in the off field and some of the maturity, and we talk about Mariota and the system, there's no reason they can't be good in the National Football League. There was no reason that Brady Quinn shouldn't have been good, or the fact that just go down the list. Obviously, Jamarcus Russell, Tim Couch. I mean, just go down the list of first round. There's no reason those guys shouldn't be good. There wasn't wrong taking them early in the draft. They just ended up not being able to play. And history will tell us that one of these two guys probably will hit and the other one will probably flop. Not that they're both not capable of hitting. So it's so tough to make the decision because you can no longer look at the film and say, okay, this guy's going to be a good NFL quarterback. It really is. We really are going to roll the dice. There's no reason they shouldn't be good.
And who's the guy from your tenure that you and Ozzie and maybe the rest of the Ravens had right there, clock's ticking on the draft board, and you 20/20 hindsight, you'll be like, man, we should have chosen that kid instead of the one that we did choose? Is there one of them?
Oh gosh, it's so hard to go back through so many of them because there's so many of them that you'd like to have gotten. We ended up getting our fair share. Typically, it was in the latter part of the draft. We had a few top 15 picks that turned out pretty good. But by way of example, and I only mean this in a complimentary way because I was a part of it right there. I don't know that there's any team over the last 10 years that's done better than the Baltimore Ravens first to last round and what they've been able to get in the value. They just do a nice job of it. By way of example, Jamarcus Russell is the highest-rated player I've ever seen on any draft board that we had in my 9 years with the Baltimore Ravens. And yet, what happened there is, is clear-cut historically in terms of the fact that the guy couldn't play. So, no matter how good the process is, there are any number of players. The biggest one that kind of jumps to mind to me, again, was Terrell Suggs, who fell to us at 10. And how many times are we going to hear this next week, particularly in a draft that this is a great draft in the sense that other than the quarterbacks, I don't know that there's really any sexy players at the top, blue-chip players at the top. So every team, how many times are we going to hear, we can't believe he lasted this long, and this was our top guy on the board?
Yeah, we have
Everybody's going to find the player they want, and it's just going to happen to be at a position they need. What are the odds of that?
Yeah.
That all 32 teams are going to end up with a player that just happened to be a real need for them because when I'm looking at this draft, it's very subjective that way.
Yeah, we have Ali Marpet of Hobart College coming up in about 14 minutes, Coach. I'm interested in seeing this D3 kid.
I love it.
Thanks for calling in.
I can't wait for Mike Mayock to tell us about, when I was looking at that Marine Coastal Academy game, in the fourth quarter, I really liked the way he came off.
Yeah, the ankle flexion in that fourth quarter was something to be to behold. I love it. That's what this is all about. Coach, thanks for calling in. I always appreciate it.
Sounds good. See you next week.
You bet. That's Brian Billick of the NFL Media Group joining us here on The Rich Eisen Show.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.